There we go. Just start when the countdown starts.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this Friday, September 29th, for another Fireside Friday AMA. I'm Mac. I'm here with my co-host, Gary, and our guest today is Jeff Milligan from Web3Pro. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so you're based in Philly,
That is
went to
right.
Penn State,
Penn State. Yep.
and I noticed you spent a good amount of time at Bird, like a significant amount. And I'm super curious. I'm guessing that's the world of consulting. I'm wondering if it's anything like the HBO show House of Lies.
I love that show, by the way. Love it. Watched every season. It's funny. I in my career, I've had two jobs. This is my second. So I spent 15 years at PwC. The story that I tell, and it's very, very true, by the way, is I was spending more time doing crypto, NFTs, blockchain, anything I can get my hands on, more so than my actual day job. So at that point, I realized that I needed to make a change. So I connected with our CEO, who is also a PwC alum, and jumped ship. Went from a 30,000 person company to a 20-person startup overnight. Haven't looked back ever since. So I've been here for about a year and a half.
But what are some of your favorite memories from? Uh, and I mean, PwC, they handle a lot, right? They're the folks with the envelopes at the Oscars. They've got clients from around the world. Like, what was that like for you?
It was a phenomenal place to start your career. So I actually I interned with them while at Penn State. So I walked into my senior year with a high GPA. They offered me a job after the end of my junior year. So I ended that senior year with a very low GPA because I already had a job my senior year. But from there, it was a great experience just for a young kid, getting to work with some super, super smart people at the C level. And during my time there, I did everything from strategy, risk, ops, tech integrations, compliance, all kinds of stuff in multiple industries. So it really kind of laid the foundation for, just business fundamentals and how to be a good advisor to clients and then leaders and businesses. So I think it's translated well. Smooth shift going from consulting over to Web3 Pro, but it was interesting. And it's funny, back to your question on the House of Lies, it is almost exactly like that. I feel like you get like the McKinsey, the BCG guys that think they're way up here from a strategy consulting standpoint. We were more the executors, but it's funny. It's very, very true.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, that was my one sort of whammy question. I wanted to lead off with it, but I also
Yeah,
wanted to let
yeah, love it.
folks get a little bit of context and see, because a lot of our listeners are pretty close to the Web3 space and understand it pretty well. Um, so I think it's always nice to let people kind of a glimpse of the other side of folks' lives. So I know
Yeah.
you're a dad. I was actually curious if you have any.
I do not have any dogs.
That's okay.
Three little minions running around the house at all times. So three kids and a
That's
newborn. So yeah,
it's a
hands are
handful.
full,
Yeah,
man.
for sure. Very cool. Well, I know Gary got some questions about Web3 Pro, so I'll let him dive into those.
Awesome.
Yeah, I do. Before we do, I know Max already gone over some of your, background and history, but for our listeners, and we've talked a number of times, but why don't you give your quick, 30, 60, 90-second, whatever you want, intro, or 5 minutes,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah, yeah,
you want.
absolutely. So, I wear multiple hats at Web3 Pro. We are a team of just over 20. 15 of those 20 are all on the engineering side. So, um, I lead our go-to-market, I lead sales, and I also oversee all of our current clients. So we've worked with some massive names. We work with Lamborghini, Ducati, Lotus Cars, We work and are continuing to work with FIFA, Rolex, etc. So we've had the opportunity and the good fortune of working with some very big names, which makes my job easier from a sales standpoint to at least get that meeting and get in the door and be able to say, hey, to other C-suite, here's how we're helping them, and here's how we can help you all. But so Web3Pro, we've had an interesting journey. So since 2018, we've been around. We started out with a platform called Gear, and it was a platform that allows brands and game studios and publishers to monetize their IP within a very simple workflow. So it cuts down the time from going through contracting and asset approvals from days to legitimately minutes. So we've worked with FIFA on that. We've since transitioned to more of a community engagement as a service. So in 2021, we launched with Lamborghini. It was a lot of, during the peak of the NFT bull market, crypto bull market, where we offered white label marketplace. So a lot of the brands that we've spoken with over the years, they didn't want to launch on an open sea. They didn't want to have any type of brand. They're very cautious of their brand. So we allowed that control with a white label marketplace. So we do payments, we do custody. It's a very simple process. Sign up with an email, pay with a credit card. You can throw money into your account onto our site, etc. And over the past 6 to 9 months, we've expanded on that offering to be more of again, what we call community service, community marketing as a service. So we have a platform called the Hub. So it entails everything from robust loyalty and engagement programs to a QR code workflow to co-creation to voting, polling, and individual branded chatter. So it allows really a deeper two-way connection between brand and consumer. So all of the different things that we do, rather than brands kind of jumping into the Web3 space, pushing out NFTs, going in for a cash grab where it's a one-way push of information from brand to consumer, we have a platform that allows for deeper connections and a true two-way connection between brand and consumer. So we'll be launching kind of V2 of our platform in the coming weeks. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, so that's, a little bit of a history on us and what we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just sharing your webpage a little bit at the end there while you were talking. So you work with a lot of large existing legacy brands, right? Pre-Web3 brands that are looking at this as an opportunity for digital products. That's how, we met, actually through our mutual connection, Gen City. Phenomenal group to work with.
Yep.
And you talked a bit about them wanting to protect their brands, right? Which again is how this conversation started between Gauss and Web3Pro. What are some of the other things you're seeing that they want to explore, how they want to protect their brands? And I'll ask the third part of that after, because I feel like that's a lot to start.
Yeah. So from as everybody I'm sure in the audience and you guys know very well, the industry has shifted dramatically over the last 6, 9, 12 months. It feels like every 2, 3 months there's a new trend, there's a new theme that's arising. Brands have shifted obviously away from jumping into the space to generate a new revenue stream, but they're truly looking at it from an engagement standpoint. How do we better the engagement with our fan base, with our consumers, with our community, and how do we leverage that to focus on core business issues? So financial considerations aside, a lot of the companies that we're speaking with now are really interested in how do we leverage Web3 and blockchain technology to enhance our omni-channel marketing strategy? How do we understand better our customers throughout each of their individual channels? So for example, for one of our clients, we are currently scoping out a project. I know you all probably heard of them. It's a massive fight league. It happens in a cage. There's a massive following, loyalty, etc. Surprisingly enough, one of their biggest challenges, one was, hey, they want to generate more revenue. Great, everybody does. But the second one was they have all of these different revenue streams. They have merchandising, they have arena, they have ticket sales, but they don't have a connection between who buys a ticket, who buys a product, and then who goes to the store and buys a shirt that says their brand on it. So we're working with them on a pilot where it's almost like a passport. So if you buy a ticket to an event, you sign into their brand's app, and they now know that you purchased a ticket. You log the ticket in there. Then, if you go to the arena, you then have the ability to scan a QR code or a barcode on the product. You log that in your app. Now this company knows which person is, and the demographic and information about them. Who are they purchasing? What event are they heading to? And then in that event, what products are they purchasing? And they can use all of this data, tie it in with their existing CRM to better understand their customer base. And one of the questions that we get is, okay, so why is someone going to do this? Why are they going to take the time to even throw an email address, throw some of their PII, let's call it? And it's because they're incentivized to do so. Incentivized through airdrops, what we call badges. The more badges you collect, the more perks or benefits that you have. So I like to think it is almost like a Starbucks Odyssey on steroids that is truly solving a much larger business problem from a better understanding your customer. And, they can resell these assets on secondary. But again, most importantly to the brand, we're packaging up all of this data from a community standpoint and delivering it to them in a way that generates insights, right? There's one thing to have a bunch of data, but how can we synthesize that data to actually add value to their business? So I think that is one of the going back to better understanding who your customer base is. That's one of the biggest challenges, surprisingly, that we've heard. In addition to, hey, how are we going to operate when there's no cookies around, right? Cookie deprecation. How do we leverage MPC wallets from a data compliance and a data privacy standpoint? Brands are hesitant to sometimes own the data. So how can we help them with almost like an Amazon, where Amazon's paying users $2 to share their data? How do we do something like that on chain? And blockchain makes it easy to do so. So it's again, in summary, away from those financial considerations and more towards how do we solve key business problems that are really important to the highest, to the leaders of major organizations.
Yeah, see, I think that's one of the most interesting things about us meeting and our conversations together thus far. I think it was our very first conversation where you're like, wow, we're putting that in our deck, like right now. Like we're already talking about the same exact things on both sides. We're working, to the same goals from different angles. Us from infrastructure, you more directly with the clients. And both, I think, are needed. So 2 questions next, and then I'll pass the baton back to Mac. First, what are your thoughts about the overall blockchain space and public blockchains as it relates to these brands? And do you think they're going to move as kind of a follow-up to that?
So it's a good question, Gary. So we've seen now that, for example, Lamborghini they were very carbon conscious. They were very concerned about companies in the EU. They have just like a different level of environmental and sustainability concerns. There's a lot of regulations around it. So we actually started Lamborghini on Palm blockchain. Wasn't ideal. Not much interoperability. We shifted them over to ETH. And now we're seeing, issues with gas prices and things like that. We knew that was going to happen. It was a decision that was made by Lamborghini. But once ETH switched over to POS, then some of those carbon concerns, sustainability concerns decreased, right? What we're seeing now is that brands are moving to chains with the most interesting technology. So there's a lot of new players in the space like yourself. And brands are open to exploring that technology, right? They're not centered on, hey, we have to launch on ETH or we have to launch on an EVM sidechain. They're open to exploring new and interesting partners that provide secure authentication for whatever it is that they're doing. And they're moving to brands with interesting tech and new and novel tech. So I would say in the folks that I've spoken with, they're very open across the board, kind of moving away from some of the bigger players, which is great for us, and which is why, you know, I know one day very soon we will have the opportunity to partner together, and bring some major brands into Gauss.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Um, I'm really looking forward to the future where artists, brands, things like that, because Mac and I have talked about it with musicians, look less for that upfront capital in recognition that the long-term revenue stream from transaction fees and secondary sales, whatever, is a bigger play. I'm gonna pass the baton back over to Mac though.
Yeah,
I have a
actually,
big question I want to ask later. By the way, it's a big topical one, but I'm
All
holding
right,
that one.
I'm ready for it.
well, no, I think that's cool that you brought that up, Gary. And I'm actually putting the finishing touches on a piece about the history of the music business and the traditional model of being, you know, and having to recoup from a small percentage of the sales of the wholesale price of the, you know, unit, and accounting for shrinkage and breakage and all that kind of stuff. But are you seeing, how are you seeing technology create a shift in the business model for the companies that you're working with, or some of the other sort of, you know, people in the space?
I think it's given folks a new perspective on what can and can't be done. I think a lot of the brands that we're working with, the technology kind of just sits in the background, right? You know, there's not a big mention of Web3. There's not a big mention of blockchain. It's how can we use that underlying technology that sits in the background and then truly add and build business value and solve problems that are important to the business. So um, companies are open to exploring. You know, for example, we're working with a luxury goods manufacturer on secondary market authentication. It's very difficult and challenging where you have major brands, for example, like a Rolex, where there are a number of fake watches that are being distributed, and there are actually instances of licensed Rolex dealers unfortunately selling a fake watch because they've gotten so good at building those dupes, let's say. So
Gotcha.
with blockchain technology, you're able to truly authenticate. You know, there's an, let's just, you know, at the highest level, there's an item number. That item number turns into a digital title for that good. It's all on chain. It can't be fudged with. The owner knows that it's authentic. And it then allows for the resale of that watch, which, by the way, I found it really interesting, is that the primary sales of luxury goods, let's again using Rolex as an example, is only about half of all of the sales that take place from a secondary market perspective. So secondary market sales are literally double that of the primary. So how do we provide a way where people are confident in their goods that they're receiving without having to take it to a watch dealer and have it inspected and determine whether or not it's actually a legit product? So blockchain allows us to do that. So it's things like that where we can do different things that we weren't able to do, let's say 10, 15 years ago, that businesses are really interested in.
That's interesting. So, with businesses diving in, kind of looking at their needs first, how long do you think it'll be before, you know, we hit some level of saturation, and then, you know, the wider audience starting to realize some of the advantages um, that they can take advantage of or experience now in this space?
Yeah. I think from an you scroll through LinkedIn and you see, different thought leaders and those just with opinions about, how are we going to bring on the first billion users to Web3, right? And it's, what is the easiest way to interface with blockchains, with dApps that sit on top of those chains, with brands that are getting into the technology and building in the space. If we can find a way to just easily onboard, and again, maybe it's an email address, maybe it's a phone number. All you need is a phone number. You have a wallet. There's none of the go to MetaMask, create a wallet, have to purchase crypto, all of that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily know, Gary, if there's going to be a point of saturation, but I think the space is truly going to take off once we find a way to, again, kind of eliminate some of the barriers to entry for some newcomers, and truly make it a medium where you don't even realize it exists. Again, it's just, you're entering and you're in the space via a phone number, an email address, something seamless as that. So I know there's companies out there that are trying to solve that problem. I don't think we're there yet, but once we kind of hit that ease of adoption standpoint, I think that's when things really take off.
Yeah, it needs to just work.
Exactly.
What was your big question, Gary? Now I'm super curious.
My big question was about the space as a whole, digital products, right? I have a lot of concepts and visions of where we're headed in the future. We've talked about some of those. One of them relates to digital products, because that's a lot of what we're talking about, right? Some of the things on chain are securities. Admittedly, we all have to admit that some of the things on chain are securities. They're touting themselves as such. They should be regulated as such. I personally think the FTC should probably have a hand in overseeing more things in this space, which they haven't really made steps toward. But to that end, they haven't really made steps to regulate at a federal level digital products as a whole. Right? Your average consumer, when they buy an ebook or a movie or a song, they're buying a revocable license to access that on a platform. They're not buying a product. So my question to you, with that preface, is what do you think the future of digital products is, especially as it relates to brands and them having that as a one of their new products? For Rolex having digital watches that they can sell for use with avatars, Arizona Iced Tea being able to sell their can as a skin, that pattern with the cherry blossom and a nice teal color or whatever. That's the question.
I wish I could tell what the future holds, Gary, but I think at one point there will be some type of regulation around monetization of digital IP. I don't yet see it. It's not a concern that any brands that we've spoken with have today. Initially they saw it, hey, brand X is just, they just brought in $3 million. We want to jump into the game. And then I think that's where it impacted just kind of the name of NFTs. The article that came out the other day, 95% of NFTs are worthless. What a shitstorm that's caused. And I think it's baseless. It's a cyclical market. There's a significant use case for NFTs. And I think things will turn around, and will turn around pretty quickly in the next 6 to 12 months. A lot of that does have something to do with where we are from a crypto standpoint in terms of bear market. But I think it's just, there have been other things that have taken precedent. For example, AI over Web3. You hear AI this, AI that. It's just a very, people get very excited about certain things. And I think things will turn around from a digital goods standpoint. Regulation, I wish I knew, Gary. I will say that it's not a concern that we've seen from any of our clients at this point in terms of, hey, are we going to shoot ourselves in the foot or get a letter from the SEC if we're out here trying to monetize our IP. We see it as it's no different if they're selling a physical T-shirt that has their logo on it in a store. Why can't that same thing be digital?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of to my point that they're just digital products. The article that you mentioned, obviously, I've seen it. I think anyone in the space has seen it.
Yep.
Um, I don't think it's far off base. I think they over sensational. You know what the hell I'm trying to
Sensationalized.
say.
Got
Yeah.
it. Yep.
We got you.
Jesus, I can't get that word out today. Anyway, um, I don't think that's ever happened to me in one of these. That's funny.
It's Friday, man.
My point is that I don't think it's different than Pokemon or Magic cards. 95% of them are worthless. Beanie Babies had a huge fucking hype cycle. They're not securities.
Yep.
They were worth a shit ton of money. Some of them still are today, but 95% of them are worthless. I think that's a normal product cycle. 95% of cars are worthless after X time frame, right? And these are gross over generalizations, but I don't see it being different for digital products than it is anything else, right? You have yard sales where you're able to buy up something for 25 cents that originally they paid 200 bucks for. You know,
Yep.
how much are VCRs at yard sales today? Maybe a couple bucks. Some of those VCRs people paid hundreds of dollars for. You know, before we had the cool $15 VCR. But, you know,
I think I think one thing though that does set digital products apart from analog products is their updatability, right? So, you know, when brands start to see that digital product is a direct relationship with the consumer and they can continue to pump value into it and continue to, an evolving experience. I think that's what's going to really help people turn that corner.
Well, I think that leads to another great question, right? Because we've talked about this, Mac, before, with plenty of others. But the idea of digital legacy or the longevity of digital products and their life cycles, how are brands, from your perspective, looking at that, right? They don't want, I believe, most don't want to just launch something, fire and forget it, unless that is a one-use product, right? I think most want that engagement and value that you were talking about earlier. So how are they viewing that and planning for it?
Could you repeat that last part of your question, Gary? My end.
Yeah, so
Hopefully
when
you
they're
guys hear me
developing...
okay? Things just cut out.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
we
okay.
can hear you.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. So the question was, with the digital product campaigns that they're looking at building on-chain products, how are they looking at the longevity and life cycles of those? Because they may have some that are fire and forget, single-use, sold and done products, but I imagine most are going to want that continued engagement. You were talking about UFC and the ticketing and having that sort of back and forth relationship. How are they looking at and planning for that?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we're very, very clear on with brands that, as you know, I'm sure you guys have spoken to a ton of different brands. Those that are newer to the space, it's all about education. We spend 6 months, unfortunately, trying to educate them on why they should be doing X, how to get into the space, how to get into the space the right way. And with that, they need to have a long-term vision. Long-term in this world seems like a really long time, but from a brand standpoint, 2 to 3 years. So get into the space. If you want to do something interesting, launch a collection, launch a loyalty program, have an engagement initiative, you need to have a long-term strategy that supports that. So when we sign with clients, typically our deals are 3 years. So we truly help them along their journey. Clients have an opt-out after a year. Luckily, we haven't yet had that happen, but there needs to be a long-term vision and strategy that supplements and supports whatever it is that they're doing. So if they want to get their feet wet, there's a number of different things we can do. We can do QR code campaigns to try to help you generate a customer database, if that's something that you all care about. If you want to launch an NFT collection, that's great. You want to launch a loyalty program, even better. But if a brand kind of just wants to do a one and done revenue grab, then that's not the brand that we necessarily want to work with. Yeah, we can probably and will share with them our APIs. They can kind of do it on their own. But in terms of where there is Web3 Pro facing in terms of helping them along, and it's publicly known that we're helping them along, we're not going to get into that type of one and done. We really stress the importance of building that long-term strategy. So with that then comes, so how do you then continue to engage, right? 2-3 years is a long time. Maybe there's different collections, maybe there's a bunch of different other initiatives, but it's an iterative process. I think a lot from an engagement standpoint, a lot of the brands that we've worked with are thinking about what new and different things that we can do that sometimes don't necessarily it's not kind of switching off the topic a bit here, but brands in the EU, there's strict regulation around giving out merchandise. Lamborghini can't give anything away. Ducati can't give anything away. So we got to find ways around that. That's what people want. People want giveaways. People want freebies. But how else can we engage? So we can bring them to the headquarters and give them a VIP tour, dinner at a Michelin star restaurant, where it is all kind of funded by the brand, but there's not the perception of any type of gift or giveaway. So it's an ongoing conversation around how do you continue to engage. There's a million different ways to do it, but ultimately my long-winded answer, Gary, is that we are in it for the long term with the brands that we're working with, and otherwise I just don't think you're going to be successful.
Right, I agree on that point again, and you don't have to worry about long-winded responses. I'm long-winded as hell myself. So. Mac, did you have a follow-up on that?
No, I mean, I think we've talked that through pretty thoroughly, which is good. No, I think it's time for a good breather. Switching gears here. So we covered that you're a dad. We covered that you don't have any dogs. So when you find time for Jeff, what does Jeff like to do to relax?
It's a great question. So I recently found a boxing gym in Philly. It's not one of the hardcore boxing gyms, but it's this, some of you out there might have heard of it. It's called Rumble. It's half the class is you're hitting a bag with music blasting, the lights are super dark, and then the other half of the class is lifting weights pretty heavy. But I used to box in college. I've continued the boxing here and there. There was this fantastic gym that in downtown Philly. It was more of a boxing gym as you would imagine, but they offered different types of classes. They closed during COVID, so then I went over to this new one, Rumble. But I try to get my workouts in the morning. It's funny, back in the day, I'd work out to like try and look good, right? Now I work out just so I have some mental clarity throughout the day. It's funny how things shift. But outside of that, play a little golf. My wife and I try to spend some time together. I always, the good thing is I work from home. COVID has been able to allow us to work from home pretty much, which is fantastic. I get to see my kids throughout the day. I usually try to take off at 6 p.m. every day, have dinner with the family, put the kids to bed, and then I hop back on my computer, do what needs to be done. I probably watch way too much Netflix and all that other shit, man, but for my liking, I need to pick up a book to replace that every now and then.
So what are you watching right now?
I'm not sure if this is accurate, but
what do you got, Cam?
Are we getting lag issues?
I'm good. I can hear you guys. So what am I watching right now? Shit, I just watched this show on Paramount, I think, which, by the way, anyone who's watched The Mayor of Kingstown, that show with Sylvester Stallone, there's another one called The Lioness. and it's all written
Yeah.
by this guy Taylor Sheridan. I'm like, this dude is
Yeah.
he's a goddamn genius. All of these different shows that he's coming up with and writing, it's unbelievable. So if you ever see a Taylor Sheridan show, jump in. He actually wrote all of the Yellowstones and the 1923
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff too. It's unbelievable. Like, how did
He
and
started with Sicario.
yes.
That was his breakout picture. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Like, how does all of that come from one mind, right? All of these different diverse topics. It's just wild. But I love
Well,
all of his
he's
stuff.
really smart. He's
I
really
feel
smart in who he partners with. So, Mayor of Kingstown, he partnered with the guy who plays the main cop, the bald guy. He's a lead writer on that show. But yeah, Taylor's amazing at his storytelling, and he's also very, very smart at how he casts, and then he executive produces with, who he partners with in the writing room.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Yeah, have to be. Especially
Um,
the latest one, The Lioness. Have you seen that, Mac?
I was a huge fan. I haven't started it yet. We only get that app in one of our larger TVs, and I only get access to that when she's out of town. So the second through the fourth, I'll be binging that show. But back to Rumble, I believe, if memory serves, isn't Tony Robbins one of the first investors in that franchise?
You know what? I don't know. I'm probably could do a quick Google search. But yeah, I mean, they're
I
everywhere. They're
believe that's
popping up all
true.
over the place. Franchises around the entire country. It's
Yeah.
pretty solid.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
highly recommended. If you know, the other great thing is classes are typically 80% female, so that's wonderful. So you know, I'm just like
Lots
the
of
only
good
guy
energy.
hanging on there. No, yeah, there's a good group of guys at the one in Philly, but it's kind of like your typical class, but not. If you like to get some stress out and just punch a bag for 30 minutes straight, go for it.
Very cool.
So I have another question for you that's in the personal realm that also intersects with Web3, right? So you're married, you had a solid job at PwC for decade and a half, and you leave that to work in this fledgling tech space during the last bull cycle, the 2018 bull cycle, when there were less than 1 million active users, probably, right? MAU. And we're at 2.5 to 5 million today, probably. What was that like for your personal life and making that decision to jump into really rough new waters, uncharted waters with a wife, with, your family, all of that stuff? What was that like? And what advice would you give to somebody listening, potentially thinking about making a similar move?
Yeah. It was a long, drawn out, and really difficult decision. I was real close with my colleagues at PwC. I was doing a lot of my work in the pharma, life sciences, and biotech space. So I spent probably the last 7, 8 years doing that. And I was at a point in my career where I was senior within the organization. So to kind of make a shift into something new, it can be done, but it's a little more challenging than if you're just kind of starting out. I was losing my passion for the space. And when I was spending 6, 7 hours a day trying to keep up with the latest trends and news in crypto and Web3, I wanted to jump at the opportunity, given that our CEO, Christian Ferry, and we go way back. I knew to an extent what I was jumping into, and I truly wanted to follow my passion. Some may think it's a bit crazy. I wouldn't regret it for a second, but you really do. Yeah, man, there's something to be said. If you like the work that you're doing, never stop. But if you're thinking of your job, if you can't get up on a Monday morning and be excited and ready to roll, um, not everybody has the luxury, but you try to find something that you're truly passionate and with that, the money will come. I took a bit of a pay cut. I'm going from a massive company to a startup that has cash constraints, right? So even from a pay side was a risk, but that risk at this point is now paying off. Um, Advice, you really have to do what you're passionate about and you have to enjoy what you're doing. And I think I felt comfortable making the switch because leaving PwC, I honestly felt like I can jump into any role pretty much anywhere outside of like a tech and a core engineering. From a fundamental business skills standpoint, I can learn and kind of jump into any role with just the 15 years that I spent at PwC. So the training, the people that I've met, the connections that I've made that transition a little bit easier. And it's just working with, you know, a super high caliber of people for 15 years that you really kind of have a good sense from a pure business standpoint. It sounds vague, but I felt comfortable. I felt like I can kind of do anything. And if I can jump into a space that I'm passionate about and really build something from the ground up, as opposed to advising clients constantly, I was all in. So, thank God for my wife though. So my wife, she at the time she's raising our kids as well. From she didn't have a job, so she is a neonatal intensive care nurse by trade.
Wow.
She now teaches at the University of Pennsylvania. She's starting a full-time job, kind of managing all of the teachers within the University of Pennsylvania nursing program in November. So, but at the time, you know, there was one income, and that income took a pay cut. But I did it based on the type and nature of the work that we were doing. So it was a risk. You know, it's paying off. We're continuing to build, and hey, hopefully one day there's an acquisition or something bigger down the road. But yeah, that's the hope.
IPO. Just shoot for IPO.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you jumped in at 2018. 5 years later, what was it? 4 years later, we had the next cycle. So you've been through two big up cycles.
So Gary, I actually got into the space in September 2020. So I was,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So I caught, you know, I didn't catch
You were in the middle.
Yeah, I was right in the middle. Yeah. I mean, I really, I started throwing my money at different exchanges when Bitcoin was at like 18K. Then it soon shot up that same December to like 34K. And I was right in the middle.
Okay. My apologies. So Web3Pro got started in 2018. You moved over in 2020.
Yes, that's right. 2022, actually. So I've been with Web3Pro for about a year and a half. So this is a fairly recent shift. Yeah. So
Yeah, I thought it was a little longer. I should have looked at your
no,
LinkedIn
no,
page longer.
that's all good. Yeah. So I've been with Web3Pro for about a year and a half at this point. So
Yeah. So wow, you are. I hadn't even this whole time we've talked. By the way, so credit to you that you sound like you've been in it for longer than you have. I think that's a credit.
I appreciate that.
But okay, so shit, that's even more recent. All of these feel more valid as questions than, you know, still because
Yeah.
you're jumping in now at on the other side of this cycle.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I
shit.
mean, it's again, it was no regrets to this point. I think ultimately with Web3Pro, we are looking to be, you know, our goal is to be a pure SaaS provider. So we want to provide technology applications that allow brands to enter into Web3 and do it very simply. We're not yet there from a SaaS standpoint, and the reason being is because there's still a lot of hand holding that has to be done. So it's almost like when we're bringing on new brands, it's half of a consulting / managed services project, and then the other half is technology, right? Because they're looking to us as the experts to help them through. We partner with a ton of different agencies out there, Gen City Labs, good friends of ours. And we have other partners as well that, you know, also specialize in the strategy and the execution from a creative community marketing standpoint. But we started out with all of those skills in house, and we're moving away from being that full service shop to being that tech only provider. So yeah, man, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of iteration and learning and evolving for everyone in the space, for brands moving into the space, for us working with brands moving into the space. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're running close to the end of this. Mac, we have another 10, 15 or so minutes. Do you have any hard-hitting Web3 questions, Web3 Pro questions?
No, I just, I mean, really more of a reflection than anything. You were giving some advice earlier about, somebody looking to make the transition, and I'd say if there was one thing I noticed in you that I think is also important for folks, uh, considering that it's, you to me appear not to be afraid of hard work, and I'd say to anybody looking at this, don't be afraid of, you know, doing the hard work and making calls to people that might not seem within reach. Gary surprised me yesterday when he's
Connected with.
who was it at the FTC?
Oh, the one of the directors, the Bureau of Consumer Protection at the FTC. I mean, just connected on LinkedIn, and we'll be reaching out, but
Yeah,
because I want to.
and then also,
Anyway, sorry, Matt.
and then also, earlier, or late last week, earlier, running together, but one of the older business models out there that we've kind of been mapping as a metaphor for people from my generation and before is the old. I think on the East Coast it was S&H green stamps. On the West Coast it was blue chip stamps. But like people understood that you go to a store, you buy a certain amount of products, you earn some stamps, you pop all those stamps, and they become this, essentially a currency that you can use to then cash in for things. Gary somehow got connected by email with the founder of S&H green stamps, and
Acquirer.
they've stuck.
He bought it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But they've struck up a conversation that been able to speak over the phone. But it seems to me like one of the things that you got from your time at PwC was, the understanding of how to, roll up your sleeves and get to work and not be afraid of doing that. Not really a question, more of a reflection.
No, I mean, I completely agree. There's a lot that goes on in the background just in terms of, I mean, it's things as simple as if Web3 or not Web3, if it's an industry that you're passionate about, just read, understand what's happening, understand the big players, understand the trends. If you can have then a conversation, let's say a client calls you up and asks you a question, you can be able to then confidently speak about whatever topic it is. You feel informed. That then lends credibility to you as a person and as an advisor, as a tech provider, what have you. So it's just doing that work. But again, you're not going to put in the work if it's not necessarily something that you're really interested in, right? So if you do have that interest and passion, and if there's anyone out there that is looking to make a jump, just continue trucking along. Learn as much as you possibly can. There's so much stuff out there that just makes the knowledge acquisition so easy. And you make yourself more credible when you do then have the opportunity to speak with folks at the highest levels of any organization. So spot on, Mac.
So I know you said you want to read more. What's a book you'd recommend and a book you're looking forward to reading? I just picked up Sir Patrick Stewart's memoir, and I'm looking forward to that one as a preface.
You know what? Let me see. Here we go. So I got a couple. All right, ready? There's one book that I just read. It's called The $1 Billion Whale. More finance driven, but it's about this guy who ended up working with, I believe, the Saudis in their sovereign wealth fund, and he basically raised billions and billions of dollars just kind of from nothing, and turned out to be a big fraud. Awesome book called The $1 Billion Whale. This one, I don't know if my screen's mirroring or not, but Bad Blood, the Theranos story, phenomenal book.
Yeah.
That was a really good one. I like to read, I read a lot of nonfiction, like, business stories. I read the Bob Iger biography. I forget what that's called. Where's that at? And then also the Phil Knight book, Shoe Dog. Awesome book. So it's all, I tend to keep my reading in the business space. But what am I looking to read? I'm actually just started Matthew Ball's The Metaverse. Interesting read. Interesting thoughts and kind of theory behind all of that. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, he's had a whole web series or bunch of
Yeah.
essays that he
Yep.
put out first. Then he moved over to his book because that's on my to read list. I'm like you as well. I read a lot of business stuff, of course. Uh, highly suggest this one. I don't know if I'm Five Dysfunctions of a Team.
Okay, cool.
It's a really, really short but good leadership fable. Anyway, just went through that one recently, but I also have a huge chunk of fiction. I love my sci-fi, all of that stuff, and I've recently picked up biographies, memoirs, and things like that a lot more. Um, Paris Hilton, I just went through hers recently.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Barack Obama's going to go through Patrick Stewart's, all the way back to God, what was it called? Why do white guys have all the fun? Um, I'm looking it up right now. It'll be fun. It's been a bit. Why should white guys have all the fun? Is the title of it. It's about Reginald Lewis, one of the first really big black businessmen in the finance world, and his story.
Okay, cool.
Really, really good story. Because that's something else, like trying to read outside my comfort zone, right? And read more about people whose backgrounds are wildly different than my own. So,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
so also, with your background at PwC, what advice would you give to young founders in the Web3 space? Because a lot of them, I don't think, are looking at this, as a business still. It's a project or a hobby or whatever, and that's fine for a time, but if you raise $1 million, you're in a business, right? So what advice would you give to a young, Web3 team?
Yeah. Two things. The first is you need to look to grow and develop your product and your team. And what I mean by that is do not look for the big payday to be acquired by a big chain or any other tech provider. You need to look at the long term. I see a lot of startups where there's a big focus on just trying to sell the company and sell the company too quickly without the growth and the product and the team that comes with it. So focus on the long term. It may sound silly or redundant, but I've seen it more times than you might imagine. The second is don't feel like you can't work with a given organization just because you're small and starting out. Basically, have no fear in who you pick up the phone and call. We were a no-name company back in 2018, and a year and a half later, we're working with Lamborghini. Just don't be afraid. If you can add value to their business, big or small, and it all starts with developing a relationship. These folks need to trust you. So find ways to develop credibility. Things as little as remembering birthdays, remembering child's names of clients. You could not imagine how far that stuff goes. If you truly get to know the person that could one day be the buyer, build a relationship with them, then regardless of how big or small you are, you then have a shot. So that plus, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and just hustle, right? You don't need to have a full product baked out, ready to go, demoed, etc., to try to win work. You can pitch some of these clients an idea, and if you have that trust and that relationship that precedes any type of engagement, they'll help you. Well, not help you, but you might be able to sign them on, and then you co-build your product together, and they fund your build for you. So there's those kind of things. Don't think that you need to have everything tightened up before you make a phone call, because it's just not the case. So hustle, 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 hustle hard. Don't be afraid who you speak with. And it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. And it's not, yeah, part of it, it's like, it's not the who you know. It's just being able to build deep relationships with potential buyers.
Yeah, I was gonna
Oh,
say
it's
you
how
miss
you know
100
them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jeff, it's always dynamite to speak with you. Really appreciate you being on here today. I have to say the man crush here is real. Like definitely you're looking forward to having you back on.
Yeah. Let's do it again
in the next few months, for sure.
Let's do it again soon.
Gary,
Yeah,
any parting words?
No, I mean, I think you wrapped it up well. I was gonna say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's
exactly it.
That's the snippet of wisdom in all that you were saying in the second part. But yeah, it's been amazing speaking with you. Love our conversations. Really looking forward to working with you on Web3Pro. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. I am super stoked for the day that will come very soon where it's going to be Gauss and Web3Pro names right next to each other, working with a major brand and working with 10 others after that. So I appreciate it, guys. I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Yeah,
You as well.
All right,
Cheers,
take care.